my dear friend Preeti Patel, friends of the dais, distinguished panelists, members of the diplomatic corps, and my dear brothers and sisters. I am delighted to join you all this evening at the launch of the book, The Modi Doctrine, New Paradigms in India's Foreign Policy. Let me begin by congratulating the editors, Dr. Anirban Ganguly, Dr. Vijay Chauthaiwala, and Dr. U.K. Sinha, for their compilation of these essays. Contributions include a very broad spectrum of both practitioners and analysts. They span diverse specializations, experiences, and even nationalities. I am confident that their collective efforts would be a valuable addition to the understanding of contemporary foreign policy. 2 years ago, the Modi government came to power with a decisive mandate. It rode on the expectations of change in our society, responding to the mood of the nation. Before the election, there was a perceptible sense of drift in policy, whether domestic or external. The feeling, particularly among the younger generation, was that India deserved better and we could in fact do better. Much of it was focused on a better quality of life and greater security, especially against terrorism. But in looking out at the world, there was also a growing feeling that we could contribute more and shape its future. Consequently, our government came in with more ambitious goals, bolder policies to achieve them, and a commitment to more effective delivery. 2 years later, much progress has been made in addressing the external aspects of this endeavor. Let me stress the linkage between domestic and foreign policy. This is key to understanding what the authors term as the Modi Doctrine. It is not just that policy and priorities are articulated differently from the past. At the heart of the change is a vision of India's place in the world, its relationship with the international community, and indeed an understanding of a rapidly transforming world itself. A week ago, in responding to questions on the second anniversary of my Govin, Prime Minister summed up our foreign policy approach with the phrase, India first. This term not only captures our commitment to protect strategic interests, but also towards greater prosperity and development at home. In our diplomatic engagements in the last 2 years, you will therefore find that a major focus now is in using international partnerships to advance domestic flagship programs like Make in India, Digital India, Skill India, or Smart Cities. Equally important, we have been extremely active in spreading the message of India being easier to do business. If railway modernization, for example, is a priority at home, it is so too for our diplomatic abroad. This right meshing of domestic and diplomatic goals is in fact one of the hallmarks of the Modi Doctrine. It has led not only to flagship programs accessing greater technology, capital and best practices, but also to a marked improvement in FDI flows. The very first diplomatic move made by the government was on its inauguration day, by inviting leaders of neighboring nations to join us on that occasion. The underlying thought has since expanded into a neighborhood-first policy that stresses cooperation, connectivity, and greater people-to-people contacts. By visiting virtually all our neighbors himself, many of them after a long gap, Prime Minister Modi has articulated a strong message of regional prosperity that resonates with the masses. Naturally, the pursuit of these objectives has not been without its challenges, among them cross-border terrorism. But the wisdom of our approach and the sincerity of our efforts are clearly gaining broader support. Comprehending recent shifts in the nature of international politics is essential to framing policies and choices. The global order has not just become more multipolar. In fact, there is an overall loosening of relationships, and even countries that are former allies are now hedging. Though the world as a whole is more globalized, distinct regional dynamics have also emerged. Situations to the east and west of India both offer examples. As a result, effective diplomacy increasingly calls for simultaneously engaging competing powers. It is now an exercise to manage differences and expand areas of agreement. Consequently, remaining passive to international developments is no longer an option. This understanding of the world explains the more active nature of Indian diplomacy now. We believe that India's interests and prestige have been well served by this more energetic engagement, and India that aspires to a greater global role must necessarily have a larger diplomatic footprint. At a structural level, this means more embassies and a larger foreign service. Both these are part of ongoing efforts. But more immediate is the requirement for broader and frequent engagements with other leaderships. It was clear to us that interactions can no longer be limited either by distance or size. We cannot expect understanding, leave alone support, from those who have not been engaged, and you would be astonished at the gaps we found when analyzing high-level visits. It was therefore with a strong sense of purpose that the Modi government approached this issue. In the last 2 years, in addition to the very vigorous efforts of the Prime Minister personally, my cabinet colleague and I have been to more than 140 countries. I myself met almost 170 of my counterparts, heads of state, government and other dignitaries in this world. The impact this has had on the world's perception of India cannot be overstated. In addition to these bilateral engagements, we have also broken new ground in terms of multilateral gatherings. The Indian-Africa Summit was expanded from the earlier 17 nations to its full complement of 54. For the first time, a summit of Pacific Island states with India was held, not just in that region but in India as well. It is not enough that India is heard or seen in different parts of the world. Perhaps our own people don't appreciate deeply enough how much of an example we can be, especially on development and governance issues. Our capabilities in technology, education or industry can make a difference to the growth of others. Even our interfaith practices and resistance to radicalization has a message for the world. Expanding programs and platforms that share experiences and contribute to global developments is an increasingly important element of our diplomatic outcomes. You can see this reflected in growing lines of credit, more grants and technical assistance, as well as in major development projects abroad. These are truly win-win situations because they also advance the international operations of Indian businesses. In an era where it is fashionable to talk of global issues, Indians must realize that representing 1/6 of humanity ourselves, we must do our utmost on challenges that will determine the future of our planet. It is with this global perspective that the Modi government approaches key international negotiations in a positive and constructive manner. We not only had a key role to play in the Paris Agreement, but also took the lead in creating the International Solar Alliance. Whether it is SDGs or PKO, we have built further on a long tradition of international activity. The sense that interests of the India and the world are in harmony pervades our thinking and is certainly one of the noteworthy aspects of the Modi Doctrine. Among the issues that dominate global concerns today is the threat of terrorism. As you all know, it is an issue which has confronted Indian diplomacy for many years because of its cross-border manifestation. Unlike in the past, we cannot agree that dialogue with sponsors and supporters of terrorism should carry on without being linked to action in that regard. In fact, we have insisted that addressing the terrorism challenge is central to engagement. At the international level, we are also putting the spotlight on early conclusion of a comprehensive convention on international terrorism. Equally important, we have made counter-terrorism cooperation a key element in many of our bilateral interactions. I can share with you that this is having its impact. At a time when there is talk of a demographic dividend, it is also worthwhile to examine its foreign policy implications. India will surely make its presence felt in the world through its people. You can already see this happening, and as education, skills, and employment progress, we can truly be a human resources superpower. Already there is an Indian diaspora that wields considerable influence in many nations. There are also other Indians with varying levels of skills who earn their living abroad and contribute to our prosperity at home. Our country makes as much by services and remittances as it does by trade in goods. These Indians abroad are a huge asset for the country, whether in the economy, in image, or in influence. The Modi government has broken new ground in appreciating their contribution, enhancing their standing, and protecting their interests. The Prime Minister has again led the way himself. Another method of expressing that is to give them the comfort that the Indian government is always there for them. That is the least we can do for our nationals who do so much for us. Perhaps you will now understand why Sushma Swaraj responds 24/7 to Indians in distress abroad, or why General V.K. Singh has been sent to Saudi Arabia to deal first-hand with the problems of our stranded workers. In fact, we have brought about a change in systemic attitudes towards them, whether it is in faster issue of passports at home, better consular responses abroad, or even in major evacuation operations like Yemen, Iraq, Libya, or South Sudan. Conversely, we are also working on involving PIO or NRIs more closely in the unfolding of our development flagship programs. Projecting cultural identity and national branding are integral elements of enhancing global standing. India is actually particularly blessed because more than many others, our cultural heritage and traditions have an international relevance. This is a reservoir of goodwill that has not been utilized as effectively as it could have been in the past. We have devoted energies and resources to enhancing global appreciation of Ayurveda and of Indian languages. Its impact as that of the International Day of Yoga is known to all of you. Recognizing the work of Indologists abroad is another expression of this intent. A defining characteristic of our government has been its focus on delivery. In the realm of foreign policy too, we are striving hard in that regard. Long pending projects abroad, especially in the neighborhood, are moving forward. The completion of the Parliament building and the Indo-Afghanistan Friendship Dam in Afghanistan, the Duriyappa Stadium in Sri Lanka, the Petrapol integrated checkpost with Bangladesh, or the Trauma Center in Nepal are some notable milestones. On the consular side, issuing passports on a post-verification basis is a radical departure. Simplifying visa issuance through electronic format and merging PIO cards with OCI are also noteworthy. Within the ministry and outside, vis-à-vis the rest of the government, we have consciously moved towards a more integrated way of working. The Modi Doctrine is led by wisdom and implemented through delivery. Its difference is there for all of you to see. How it will unfold in coming years is naturally a subject of great interest. But in foreign policy, as in other areas, we believe that broader consultations make an important contribution. I see today's event in that light. And I once again thank the organizers for inviting me to it. अब थोड़ा सा हिंदी में हो जाए। मित्रों, मैं विदेश नीति को अंदर से चला रही हूँ, आप उसे बाहर बैठ के देख रहे हैं। इसलिए ये हो सकता है कि हमारे विश्लेषण में कहीं कहीं भिन्नता हो, लेकिन आज हमारी विदेश नीति के दो तत्व ऐसे हैं जिनमें हम जरूर एकमत होंगे। और वो दो तत्व क्या हैं? पहला, पिछले कुछ वर्षों से विश्व में घटने वाली घटनाओं को भारत एक मूक दर्शक देश के रूप में देखता था। इसके विपरीत आज हम ग्लोबल एजेंडा सेट करने वाले देश बने। मैं दो एक उदाहरण दूंगी इसके। सितंबर में प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी संयुक्त राष्ट्र की आम सभा को संबोधित करते हुए एक इच्छा प्रकट करते हैं, प्रस्ताव नहीं रखते, एक इच्छा प्रकट करते हैं कि 21 जून को अंतर्राष्ट्रीय योग दिवस के रूप में घोषित किया जाना चाहिए। और मात्र 75 दिनों में 177 देश उसके को स्पॉन्सर बन जाते हैं और 75 दिन के बाद प्रस्ताव पारित हो जाता है और 21 जून अंतर्राष्ट्रीय योग दिवस घोषित हो जाता है। G20 की रिट्रीट में प्रधानमंत्री काले धन का विषय उठाते हैं और 20 के 20 देश समर्थन में आते हैं और ब्लैक मनी का इशू सेंटर स्टेज पे आ जाता है। राष्ट्रपति ओबामा क्लाइमेट चेंज में एक R&D इनिशिएटिव लेना चाहते हैं तो पहला फ़ोन उठाकर प्रधानमंत्री मोदी को करते हैं कि आपका सहयोग मिलेगा तो मेरा इनिशिएटिव आगे बढ़ेगा, इसलिए मैं चाहता हूं कि आप सहयोग दें। और प्रधानमंत्री मोदी उनके साथ जाकर उस इनिशिएटिव को फ्रांस में शुरू करते हैं। अपने तौर पर प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी तय करते हैं कि एक इंटरनेशनल सोलर अलायंस का गठन होना चाहिए। फ्रांस के राष्ट्रपति को पता चलता है तो वो फ़ोन करके कहते हैं कि मैं आपका साथ दूंगा, हम इकट्ठे लॉन्च करेंगे। और कुछ दिनों के भीतर इंटरनेशनल सोलर अलायंस लॉन्च हो जाता है और भारत में उसका सेक्रेटेरिएट खुल जाता है। मैं कितनी चीज़ें गिनाऊं। मैंने अभी अपने भाषण में SDG का जिक्र किया, पीस ऑफ ऑपरेशंस का जिक्र किया। आज भारत बोलता है तो दुनिया सुनती है, ये पहला पैराडाइम शिफ्ट फॉरेन पॉलिसी में। इसी तरह दूसरा बड़ा तत्व है, जब प्रधानमंत्री विदेश की धरती पर जाकर भारतीय समुदाय को संबोधित करते हैं, एक तो वहां भारत की शक्ति का प्रदर्शन होता है, दूसरा वहां के भारतीयों के प्रति उस देश के लोगों के मन में आदर का भाव बढ़ता है, और तीसरा जब विदेशी धरती पर भारत माता की जय और वंदे मातरम का जय घोष होता है तो यहाँ बैठा हुआ हर देशवासी गर्व का अनुभव करता है कि आज भारत दूसरे देश में सुनाई दे रहा है। इसी के साथ साथ जिसका जिक्र मैंने थोड़ा सा इसमें किया, आज विदेश में बसा हुआ, संकट में फंसा हुआ हर भारतीय ये महसूस करता है कि उसकी सुध लेने वाली कोई सरकार भारत में है। तो एक तरफ भारतीयों के प्रति आदर का भाव बढ़ा है, दूसरी तरफ स्वयं भारतीयों का हौसला बढ़ा है। ये हमारी फॉरेन पॉलिसी का एक बहुत बड़ा पैराडाइम शिफ्ट है। मैं कहना चाहती हूँ कि विदेश मंत्रालय में ये कभी प्राथमिकता नहीं थी, ये बिल्कुल एक नया आयाम है। प्रधानमंत्री स्वयं बोले HOMs की कॉन्फ्रेंस में कि ये मंत्रालय तो सूट बूट पहन के रात को डिनर खाने वाला मंत्रालय होता है, लेकिन आज हमारी एम्बेसीज टोज पे हैं। घंटों नहीं लगते, मिनट लगते हैं, जिसमें सब कुछ होकर के उस व्यक्ति को राहत मिल जाती है। तो ये दो बड़े तत्व ऐसे हैं जहां भारत ग्लोबल एजेंडा सेट कर रहा है, भारतीयों का आदर बढ़ा है और बाहर बसे भारतीयों का हौसला बढ़ा है। मुझे लगता है हम में कितनी भी मत भिन्नता विश्लेषण में हो, लेकिन इन दोनों चीज़ों पर देश के अंदर, देश के बाहर रहने वाले लोग ज़रूर एक मत होंगे। और ये पैराडाइम दो शिफ्ट्स ऐसे हैं जिसमें हम लोग कितनी भी अलग अलग राय रखते हुए मगर इस पर हम एक मत ज़रूर होंगे। इसी नोट पर मैं अपनी बात समाप्त करना चाहूँगी।